Hey guys, Matt here. I want to do this video to show my process of how I wrote Masters Re, the new cast. I figured it would be kind of interesting to kind of just go over that. The idea kind of crossed my mind when I've been mentally preparing for the process of writing Masters Re Revolver, and so I'm just going to go over my process here, and I feel it would be really good for people who whether were interested in and want to know how I wrote it, or even this could be a good learning experience for people who were maybe wrote a story, but maybe wanted to make it better, but didn't know how, or people who are just maybe interested in wanting to write their own story, want to get into writing, but don't know how to do so, don't know like what process to kind of go through. So this will just be on that aspect, just like the process of writing. This is the first thing that I do here. This is the concepting phase. And honestly, I feel like you should concept anything you do, any kind of creative thing you do. Definitely concept it out. It's good to kind of have like notes and get a good foundation of where you're going with your project. So, and that depends on what you're doing too. If you're doing like art, you do like a rough version of your art, or if you have an idea, you get it down. This is basically what you're doing with a story, is that you're going through. So I use Microsoft Word for everything. So you're gonna be seeing a lot of Microsoft Word documents here. For the most part, anyways, I'd sometimes will use like a note program or something like OneNote or something like that. But anyways, yeah. So in here I got the summary. I start with the summary just to get a good idea of the whole entire story, getting it jotted down into like a paragraph or two, and then I get the characters. I start going into the descriptions just to get a good idea of what each character is like, and then their body types, and so I have an idea of how they move even, and what their interests are and hobbies. That helps with what they do as well, what their actions would be. Because without that, they're kind of just blank slates and they do random things, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. um, and then yeah, you can get into like the bad guys too. So I know like the bad guys kind of like, since it was it's mostly focused on 4 characters and their journey, and mostly on the main character. That's in her point of view. So and if you read the story, you would see that the bad guys don't show up too often. So there wasn't a lot to. I already knew going into the story that there was going to be a lot of backstory or anything, or a lot of like detail to go into, because you're not going to see it very much anyways. This right here, this part, and also before I get into this real quick, when you start doing this notes, these are just your own notes, so don't like try to overcorrect anything or anything like that, because this is just for you. You know what I mean? So in this one, this is something I just did for my story. This part right here of my notes helped me with knowing which leader had what Master Orb. And then I also went into a story like they made the choice of being in a rebellion, and like what their backstories was and everything, and then just the political leaders too, just because as time moves on, and this is a story about being in different time periods and stuff. I needed to know who the leaders were, even though they didn't make an appearance. I felt like I'd still needed to know, like, okay, at this time, what are leaders' name? Because as time moves on, you get different leaders and stuff like that. Like in real life with the presidency, we get a new president every at least 4 years, if not 8 years. So it's the same thing here. It's just like as time moves on, you get different leaders that control each nation. So I wanted to know like what the names would be if I did get into explaining who they were, which I didn't, and that kind of leads into the next thing here. There were things that just were cut out while I was writing. For instance, there's this whole entire thing I wrote out, which I thought was a good idea, but then when I was writing, I was like, I'm just not gonna do it. I'm gonna cut it out. It's just like anything. It's like a movie. We see like deleted scenes or whatever. It's in the script, and then they shoot it, and then they start looking at the movie and like, oh, well, those things we can cut out. Either just for story purposes or just for time purposes. In this case, it was more of a story purpose. I feel like it just would have been too much. And plus, for instance here, the Thunder was originally going to go to this character named Aiko. It's going to be a relative of Ansel, and it was going to do a whole entire Ansel thing. I cut that out because when I got to the part where they actually found Thunder, actually it worked out better in that scene. I do like this though, and I might explore it later. but I don't know. I don't know how it would fit in with other stories. So maybe in a different, maybe a side story, maybe an anthology story. You get these notes down and cutting things out as you can use, where you can repurpose them for other things. Or maybe I just take that aspect and maybe change characters around and use it for another story. You know, it could work either way, and that's the good thing about writing these notes down and keeping them as well. So that is pretty much the concept in part, and then after this, I would then start writing the story. Okay, so now that I'm done with the concept in part, now it's time to move on to writing. So normally I would just, kind of go over blank file, and I would start doing, chapter 1, and then just start writing. I was running down the street, something like that. And then I'm just kind of making things up here right now on the spot. And then a giant fireball came flying towards me. I barely had time to jump away. And I like fat fingers things, so I always tend to write my I double type and I end up hitting the wrong letters, so I don't know why I do that. I don't know, twitchy fingers I guess or something. I don't know. I'm always rewriting things, and I do it at work too. I'm constantly typing. So that's basically just an idea of what I would do if I was writing a new book. However, this is actually a rewrite, and over here is the original version of it. Like I said this in other videos, but when I originally wrote this, just was not. It was written poorly. I would say the only good thing about it was the story itself. So what I was originally going to do, I'm just gonna erase this real quick. What I was originally going to do is take this and just kind of rework it as I copy it, save it as a new file, and then just rework it. And for whatever reason, I don't know what happened, but I had this really weird space station going on, and it wouldn't let me get rid of it. I don't know why. So I just decided to just do this other thing here where I would take the chapters one by one and copy them over, and then I would then at that point I would start reformatting it and start reading over and start finding sentences to change. I'll just try and maybe change this beginning part here. So as I woke up one morning, I looked around my room once every morning, and right here is where I start making changes, because for whatever reason every was capitalized. When it was every month when it was a full moon, I would get dreams. When it first started to happen, I was really sweaty. I would change that to I would get sweaty, and I would get rid of the really. And I've gotten used to it since then. And I would probably just change that. I've gotten used to it since then, but after it happened, I would start to, I always check to make sure it wasn't real by looking around the room. So yeah, that's basically just an idea of what I would do here. Move this over, and move this one over. And then as for the way I formatted it, I know it's kind of different, and I don't know where I came up with it, but I would always do, so I would move everything over, indent everything, but then have all the dialogue completely indented over. And just right here too, I was originally doing this way too. This one, I have to go meet my friends today, and then we'll change that to that. That's proper. That's more proper. I think either way works, but that, to be honest, is more proper. She said she said, and then another punctuation, as she said as she handed me a plate with some pancakes, scrambled eggs. I would actually, with cheese on top, yeah, I would do that. I would actually cut it right there, and then I would just move this over, and then basically continue on from there. Basically have all the dialogue parts of the sentences over. And then with the parts that are just kind of it's just not non-dialogue, would be indent the first sentence, and then the rest of it would be kind of over here. Well, I guess I should be pointing rather than pointing like this. But yeah, so I would, let me just do that again here. So I would have this just first indented, and then have the dialogue completely over on the side. So yeah, that's just kind of what I would do, and I would just continue doing it. And then, as you probably already seen here, my roommate actually showed me this. It's called Grammarly, and this is really good. It goes through everything and digitalizes a session, and it basically looks over everything and shows you everything that you could do to fix it. So yeah, that's what I would do here, and I did it for every single chapter. And that's the other problem though with Grammarly, is that it doesn't do it. It will do it, but it has a trouble doing it with long documents. So what I did was I would start another file and then move the chapter over to the new file, just the one chapter, go through Grammarly, fix it, and then copy it back into the file, and kind of recopy over what the old chapter was. So I kept doing that for every single chapter, just because of the fact how Grammarly works, how Grammarly wasn't. And then I would just keep doing that until I get my first draft. Alright, so you get your first draft done, everything seems good to go, and you probably think you're pretty much done at this point. Maybe just gotta make some corrections. No, unfortunately, no. So at this point, you basically take your first draft, and you have other people read it, whether it be like a friend that you trust, or hey, maybe even like an editor if you have an editor on the project. And then you basically take what they say, all the different points, and maybe they highlight words that you need to correct, or sentences you need to correct. And then you take that and you do another draft. And you do it again and again. You keep doing that until the story is pretty much, good. For me, I had friends that that started it, and I've mentioned this before, that started editing and then didn't finish it, and so I was my editor. I read it and read it and read it and read it, and I honestly, because I couldn't afford to hire an editor. That is something to kind of keep in mind if you are going to get serious about this. Is that if you are going to look at an editor, it will cost money, and it isn't cheap. For the most part anyways, unless you're really lucky and find that editor who doesn't mind, getting paid in meatballs or something, I don't know. Anyways, yeah, so I did 4 drafts, I did the first, second one, I did a third one, and then I did a final one, and that's the one that actually I released, and this one has, special thanks because I do have, co-creators on this who are able to read through it and tell me that they liked it, and tell me what things that they could, any ideas that they wanted to add and stuff like that. So that's basically what you did here. And then at that point, and then it's time to release the book here. No, by the time you start getting your book ready to go, that you're starting ready to be released, there's some optional things that you can do. First off, definitely have like a book cover. I mean, you don't have to have a book cover. It's definitely good to have, especially if you're wanting to do like in an actual book form, actual like physical copy, or even just something just to kind of draw people's attention when you're trying to sell it online. For this here, I did this myself. If you're not really artistic, you can definitely hire artists or whatever to make yours for you, or maybe just a friend. And I'm just using Photoshop here. I kind of went even kind of further beyond, because I'm a 3D artist, so I actually created this part right here in a couple other programs. I had to basically use 3D modeling programs, and and then I just used that. After I took my render and I took the screenshot, put it in here, did everything, like the font and everything, and the color in the background, and I did the other thing that you probably, if you're gonna release on Amazon, there is another step here for that. Depending on what you want to do here, if you want to just do just straight up ebook, they would take your cover, or you can even make a cover on there as well, which is really cool. They have like a like an editor like on the website. And there's other outlets as well. If you're trying to even hire and trying to get an actual publishing company, which would be really cool. You can reach out to publishing companies or make sure to do some research on them as well, because and I was researching some and reached out to one, and they were wanting money, and I had spoken to an actual author, and they said that they were wanting money. That's probably not good. That was probably a scam, and I'm glad she's like, I'm glad you said no. But yeah, definitely that's basically just a good example of do the research if you're going to go that route. Yeah, and so at that point, then at this point, yeah, you're pretty much already done with your book, and it's ready to go. And that's pretty much my process into making Masters Read the New Cast. And it was a really good experience, and I learned a lot. And I'll be basically taking that and doing pretty much the same thing, but I will be making some changes here and there to the process. I figured this video would be a good learning opportunity and a good way of kind of showing people what I did in the process of making the book. So be sure to stay tuned. I got more on the way. Got more news on the next book. Subscribe, follow me on Facebook. All the links are in the description. Thank you guys, and I will see you again later.